I'm a bit late to the party here, but the finale of What If Season 2 dropped a couple months ago, and I was really late to watching this season, so I watched through the entire season of What If Season 2, and that means I'm going to rank all 18 What If episodes from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Nathan, and I talk about a bunch of movies on this channel. If you're new here, down below in the comment section, share your ranking of all of the What If episodes over on my channel. I have more content like this. Check those out once this video is over. If you enjoy this video, click the like button and be sure to subscribe because it really does help a lot. With that said, let's just get straight into this ranking. In last place, What If Kahhori Saved the World? For me, this one is pretty easily in last place for me. And that's simply, and for a very simple reason, is that it kinda just feels less interesting than all of the other episodes. In which case, What If has always been about taking scenarios that we know, putting a nice spin on them, and changing up some scenarios with characters that are established. And here you get a new character, which I appreciate, and I can respect the MCU making a new original character. But it just wasn't very interesting. I don't find Kahhori all that interesting. I don't really care if she returns in any future projects. So, of all the episodes, this is the one where it's like a new character doing something new. And it just wasn't interesting to me, so it comes in last. 17. What if Thor threw a party and Captain Carter was a party pooper? Now, I'm not sure who came up with this episode, but this is just such a weird and wacky episode to exist in this show. Of all of the episodes you could have done, I don't know who came up with this premise. So for the majority of it, Thor's throwing a party and Captain Marvel is being a party pooper. You get him just being drunk for most of the time. There's no sort of character growth or anything like that. None of the plot lines were interesting. This direction for where to take the show, this episode, it's the one that felt like the most waste of time to me, where it didn't do anything interesting. It didn't do anything to satisfy me with it, and so for me, this was just a bad concept executed very poorly. Number 16, What If Killmonger rescued Tony Stark? And this is one that, back when the first season came out, I had this one a bit higher up. But here, having time to reevaluate on this one a bit more, it's just not really all that compelling. And so what do you get? You get Killmonger rescuing Tony Stark from Afghanistan. And from there, you just get a scenario where a villain is just doing evil things, not really any character growth, not really even an ending. It kind of just ends on a cliffhanger, and it seemed like it went absolutely nowhere. And with this one, it's one where I felt like it's just an evil guy doing bad things, double-crossing people. He kills 5 people in this episode, and so this one just wasn't very compelling. And it took what maybe could be a little bit interesting about what if Iron Man wasn't created, but it totally wasted that premise by just having an evil guy do bad things. 15. What if Captain Carter was the first Avenger? And this is, of all the episodes, this is probably the one that's the most bland and forgettable to me. Certainly, as a novelty, it's kind of fun to see Captain Carter in that role of Captain America in Captain America the First Avenger, but I think that this particular episode is the one that plays the most by the film that it's based off of. So you pretty much just get Captain America the First Avenger in 30 minutes with Captain Carter. It doesn't change any of the plot points or anything like that. It's legitimately just Captain America the First Avenger squished to 30 minutes with Captain Carter, and inherently that's not very interesting. And so, as the very first episode of the show, this one wasn't really a great kickoff. Number 14, What If Doctor Strange intervened? This is the finale of Season 2, and one that was a bit disappointing for me. There could have been some really interesting ideas here. This is the sequel to the Doctor Strange episode we got with this character in the previous season, and it basically kind of undoes his arc. It is built on a faulty kind of premise. his arc in the for season 1 finale is that like he's learned his lesson. He's learned not to be so self-destructive, and you create a story around he has the chance to bring back his universe. And that just isn't very compelling because it cheapens the arc that was done so well in the previous episodes, something that should be emotionally potent, and it just undo that. From there, you just get ridiculous stuff. You get Kahhori, like, running around all over the place. Every Marvel superhero ever is fighting outside. And Captain Carter has every superpower ever. That just immediately, it just feels like it's sight gags. Like, look, it's that hero. Look, they're fighting each other. Look, it's those powers. But none of it's actually all that interesting. And so this one was actually a real dud for the conclusion to the season. 13, what if Iron Man crashed into the Grandmaster? And to be fair, there's a pretty big gap between Strange Supreme intervened to Iron Man fights the Grandmaster. And from here on out, I think I enjoy every one of these episodes. And so with this one, you get an interesting scenario where Tony Stark, instead of escaping in the Avengers and falling through the portal like he was supposed to do, he ends up not making it and going out to Sakaar, and you basically get this racing sci-fi adventure in the MCU, which is just kind of fun to see. You get a bunch of fun dynamics throughout it. Gamora's thrown into the mix, Korg is in there, and yeah, it's just simply a fun episode where it's like, it's racing. It was actually initially intended to be season 1. These characters did appear in the finale of What If season 1, and I thought it did a pretty good job of basically doing Mad Max in the MCU. So I had fun with this one. Number 12. What if Happy Hogan was John McClane? Now it's a bit frustrating for me to have this one this low, but I think that there could have been something better with this episode. As a whole, I enjoyed it for the most part when it did have Happy Hogan as John McClane and Justin Hammer as Hans Gruber in the mix, referencing a whole bunch of Christmas movies and everything like that. It's a lot of fun to see that. And beyond that, you just get some great references to Die Hard. As somebody who's a big fan of Die Hard, I had fun with that aspect. I just didn't really like the actual terrorist plot or what happens to Happy. Like, I didn't like that side of it. They did this thing with, like, the Hulk serum and Justin Hammer trying to become the most powerful superhero that, I don't know, it just didn't really do it for me with that plot. And so it just makes you think, like, if this had, like, a better plot, if it just been Die Hard, I probably would have liked it more. But it did this whole weird stuff with Hulk and Happy Hogan turned purple that it just didn't really work on that level. And so while I enjoyed this episode, it could have been a lot better. Number 11, what if the Avengers died? And this is kind of a very interesting one. This is the one from season 1 where you basically just get all the Avengers dying in strange circumstances, and it's kind of a mystery thriller episode where they're trying to figure out what's actually going on, who's actually behind this. And that's what's kind of fun about this episode, is that it moves at a nice pace. You get Nick Fury. This is kind of like it's kind of like a spy thriller in the MCU, and the reveals, they seem a bit over the top, but I thought it worked as a whole, and it had some clever spins on things. And especially being set in the entirety of Phase 1, I thought it was really clever. And so just a nice little thriller episode in this show. Kicking off our top 10, what if Star-Lord fought the Avengers in the 80s? This is the one in Season 2 where Star-Lord is a little kid. And I thought this is just some of the better elements of the show. So you get a new team of Avengers, which is kind of fun to see in the 80s. You got a young Peter Quill who is given superpowers by Ego on Earth, and you get them fighting, and that's just kind of a fun scenario. Beyond that, you got sort of a character arc for our Avengers as well as Peter Quill, and you get some nice callbacks to previous films in the MCU, And so overall, just a really fun episode. It's not necessarily fantastic. I think some of it could have been executed just a little bit better because of the way it's structured. I think it needed to be a little bit longer, but overall, I did enjoy this one. 9. What if Ultron won? This is a completely bonkers episode in this show where Ultron wins the fight, destroys every single planet that ever existed, and finds the Watcher while also delving into this multiverse, or actually this universe where Ultron wins and Black Widow and Hawkeye are in dystopia. It's just a really clever spin, really fun sequences all throughout, nice callbacks with Hawkeye making a sacrifice, like nice callbacks to previous MCU movies, and it's just a really clever one, where it's also the penultimate episode where it actually does tie into the finale, and so just a really well done, really cool, really good episode that I thought, I think this is one of the more memorable episodes in the show. And yeah, it just was a really fun concept, executed very well. Number 8, what if Nebula joined the Nova Corps? This is the kickoff to Season 2, and what I really enjoyed about this episode is that it's kind of a Blade Runner-esque episode. Just with the look of it, the dystopian city, the ships that they fly, the buildings that pass by, it just feels a lot like the movie Blade Runner. You get our Deckard kind of trying to figure out what's going on with this government, and so it's very reminiscent of Blade Runner. But that's also what I kind of enjoy about this one, is that it takes influence from some of the best of the genre. It didn't play well with me when I first watched it, but it's kind of this particular episode has kind of warmed up to me. It probably was a bit too short. The certain twists and turns about it with Jan Rog and everything, kind of saw coming from a mile away. But overall, a solid episode. Number 7, what if Hela found the 10 rings? This is one that combines Shang-Chi with Thor Ragnarok. And I just had some fun with this episode. Some really nice fun with this episode, where you essentially get Hela being sent down to Earth instead of whatever underworld she was sent in the MCU, and her encountering Wenwu with the 10 rings, and it's actually a fun little clever spin, where like Odin is the villain. That's kind of fun to see. You also get like Wenwu and Hela teaming up. You get her discovering the secret kingdom in Shang-Chi. And you actually get Hela becoming a hero. The diabolical villain in Thor Ragnarok actually has an arc, actually becomes a hero, actually becomes a good person. And so, I never thought I needed Hela to have a character arc or become a good person, but this episode did that pretty well, and so I thought this is a nice, pleasant surprise. Number 6, what if Captain Carter fights the Hydra Stomper? This is the sequel to the very first episode of the show, where Captain Carter is in the position of Steve Rogers. This is a sequel to that one. The Hydra Stomper is Steve Rogers, very reminiscent of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but I think it's a good version of that. And so what you get with this episode is you get Captain Carter and her trying to snap Steve Rogers out of it, kind of like Steve was trying to snap Bucky out of it in the actual film. And yeah, this is just a nice, solid episode. You get Black Widow thrown into the mix in there. You get them going to like the Red Room. There's a little bit of Black Widow the movie in there. And so just a fun, clever little sequel to a previous established episode. And we're even going to get more of Captain Carter later in this video. And so yeah, just like I think the other 2 Captain Carter episodes are much better than the one we got in Season 1, and so this was a nice, clever spin on things. 5, what if the zombies? And from here on out, I think these top 5 episodes I really enjoy. I'm looking at them right now. I really enjoy all 5 of these episodes. With zombies, you just get a very bonkers scenario where a zombie apocalypse breaks out in the MCU, and there's only a certain remaining group of superheroes left and they have to survive. and that's just a lot of fun to see on screen, with like a dystopian zombie apocalypse, kind of like The Last of Us in the MCU, and that's just really cool. It's very dramatic. It has characters nobly dying left and right, and this is one of the episodes where I hoped would have had a sequel in season 2. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Hopefully, they have it in season 3. And with the Marvel Zombie show, I think that there could be interesting things to tell with the story. Not to say that it needs to be stretched out into a whole show in and of itself, but I think with where this episode in particular ends, there could be more things to do with it. Number 4, What If the Watcher Broke His Oath? This is the finale to season 1 of What If, and this is just a much better finale than the one we gave to season 2. My criticism of the entirety of season 2 in general was that it just felt like some random scenarios in What If that didn't really lead anywhere in the finale, but this one, it actually tied up a bunch of plot lines together from the previous seasons. It took the main character of every episode, mashed them together into the Guardians of the Multiverse, and I thought that was just a lot of fun, where they fight against Infinity Ultron. That's just simply a lot of fun to see. Likewise, you just get that nice closeout to the arc of Doctor Strange, who, like Killmonger, he kind of goes rogue, and Doctor Strange understands where Killmonger is coming from, but he's learned his lesson. He did something very similar in his episode, but he can't allow him to do that, even though Killmonger has the right intentions. Nice little closeout to his arc. Nice little closeout to Black Widow's arc. And so this is the one that tied the knots together properly to me. This is kind of what I want Season 2's finale to be, and so really enjoyed this episode. Number 3, What If the Avengers formed in 1602? This is just a really fun scenario. Like, I never thought I would be entertained by an episode where the Avengers were forming in 1602, but it turned out to be really, really fun. And so you get a scenario where, like, Loki dies at the beginning of it, and Thor becomes, like, the king of whatever you want to call it. It's like Asgard in 1600, whatever you want to call that. And you also get, this is another sequel to Captain Carter, and I thought this was a much better one, with an interesting concept about Captain Carter, and she's trying to avoid this certain group of Avengers. You get an ensemble cast. You get her teaming up with Tony Stark to close up like a warp hole in the sky, and it's just a lot of fun. And so for me, of all the episodes in season 2, I would say this is the one that's my favorite. This is the one I was most intrigued by, and so yeah, really fun episode. Our runner-up, What If T'Challa became Star-Lord? This is just a really cool one, where T'Challa becomes Star-Lord. And so, very simple one. It's Guardians of the Galaxy, but Yondu kidnaps T'Challa instead of Star-Lord, and T'Challa becomes Star-Lord. And there's just a bunch of fun scenarios that come with that. Because T'Challa is inherently a more noble character than Peter Quill, there's some really funny things where he's able to convince Thanos to stop his quest for the Infinity Stones in it. You get stuff with the Collector. You get Howard the Duck in there. For me, especially after the first episode, which I found kind of bland, this one was such a pleasant surprise. And yeah, it's just so wildly different from the movie it's based on. And so I thoroughly enjoyed what they did with this one. But without question, in first place for me is What If Doctor Strange Became Evil? Now, for me, this is easily the best episode. And What If has always been a show that I've enjoyed, but I've never it's not a show that I bother anymore to include in my major MCU rankings. I did my show's ranking just a few weeks ago, and I didn't include What If because it was an animated show. It just seemed so far detached. But I would say this is easily the best episode of the show because it is the one that holds so much emotional weight. So essentially it's Doctor Strange, but instead of him losing the ability to use his hands, Christine dies in the car crash, and that's the reason he's motivated to become a Sorcerer Supreme, and he has the chance to bring her back. But no matter how hard he tries, he just keeps failing and failing, and that's so gut-wrenching. until you get to the point in time where he breaks bad, he turns evil, he gets as powerful as he can, he goes to great lengths just to resurrect Christine, and you get to that final shot where he's like crying in the middle of it and the Watcher can't do anything about it. And that's just so gut-wrenching, heartbreaking. It's the one that evokes the biggest emotions, and so for me, without question for me, this is the one that provoked emotions. This is the most memorable episode in the entire show, and for me, this is easily the best episode. There you have it. That's my ranking of the 18 What If episodes. Down below in the comment section, share your ranking over on my channel. I have more content like this. Check those out right now. Click the like button and be sure to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end. I will see you in the next one.